Canada has always played a role in the world and will always continue to. And what's extremely important is that Canada is a force for good and a presence of that is pushing the kinds of human values and safety and security around the world. We will continue to do that.
So many words, not a lot said, but as the Federal Liberal Caucus wraps up their meetings, their winter caucus in London, Ontario today, Justin Trudeau has done a couple of media availabilities and said a lot without saying anything. Marissa Semke and Sarah McIntyre, our Sun News contributors, are with me. Here's a couple of things that I didn't hear from him, especially in London, Ontario. We've talked about it a lot on our show. What's actually happening in that part of Ontario with respect to manufacturing leaving?
Yeah, I mean, there's been, Heinz plants has shut down, Kellogg's has shut down, Freightliner has reduced its production. So it's an economy that's been hit really hard over the past couple of years. And of course, all you hear from him is we need to diversify our economy and we can't rely on Stephen Harper's boosting the oil sector to keep the country going. So you don't hear a lot of specifics. You basically, I was listening to that clip and I'm like, I don't have my decoder ring, Adrian. I just don't know what he's actually saying. He's dancing around a lot, but there's absolutely, typical of Justin Trudeau, no substance.
Yeah, we call it platitudes.
He's gone on to suggest that the government needs to, as Sarah mentioned, diversify the economy, and he's criticized the Harper government for flailing when it comes to the upcoming budget. Will they be able to balance it as they've suggested? Although I would be remiss to not mention the fact that Justin Trudeau never had any intention of ever balancing a budget because his solution to everything is a grand national spending program. But he's criticized the Harper government for being reliant on the energy sector. Well, the first thing I'd say is no one could have predicted that there would be this massive drop in oil prices. But also, to a certain extent, Canada has a lot of territory, a lot of resources, and we've always been to a certain extent reliant on the energy sector. But to suggest that we aren't a diversified economy is wrong.
Yeah, I would take Professor Ian Lee's expert opinion on that, who's said repeatedly on this network that we do have a very diversified economy, and in fact, one of the best in the world. But as U.S. President Barack Obama was focused on the middle class, so too is Justin Trudeau, talking and testing out a number of talking points for the upcoming election. Here's what he had to say about the middle class.
We need to make sure that the government's priority is focused on creating growth and jobs for the middle class. Right now, their priority is on continuing to promise a $2 billion tax break to 15% of wealthier Canadians. That's simply not responsible, and that certainly is the first thing to take off the table.
Oh, and then he runs and jets out of the scene. Okay, so what's his attack on Harper there?
He's attacking the income splitting for families. That was a 2011 election promise from the Conservatives that once the budget was balanced, they would bring in income splitting for families, basically ensuring that households weren't taxed unfairly. So Stephen Harper, back in I think it was October or November, announced in British Columbia that the government, when it did reach a balanced budget, would be moving forward with income splitting for families and be doubling the child fitness tax credit, as well as, I believe, increasing the universal child care benefit, as well as providing a new benefit for children up to the age of 17. So all about families.
Okay.
So he's criticizing that, but he's not offering an alternative. He says we need to create jobs and growth. How are you going to do that, Justin Trudeau? Like, as he says, the budget just balances itself. That's his understanding of the economy. He gives absolute no specifics on how he would differ from Stephen Harper's Conservatives.
And I just want to add to that. You're absolutely right in that. I mean, I think few people really, I think more people don't really realize what's coming out of the mouth of Justin, which is sheer platitudes. There has been no plan, no policy proposed on this front.
He doesn't need one.
No.
I mean, he's even suggested that he'll wait until the election. If he is able to unveil something, I look forward to seeing it.
Yeah, something that's other than, well, I mean, they will, of course, have to come up with a platform. It's just, my point is, he doesn't need to come out with anything. Like, we may all think that, he doesn't have any policy positions he stands on, but you and I know, Sarah, he doesn't have to.
He doesn't have to, but I would say this: he does need to actually contrast with the sitting government. So you can criticize all you want, but you actually have to have something else that you're offering up to Canadians, as opposed to just simple criticisms.
Well, speaking of criticisms, one thing and one area where Trudeau has offered no alternatives and more of the platitudes, as we say, is with respect to Canada's mission with our coalition friends fighting the terrorist group ISIS. Here's what Trudeau had to say about that.
Yes, Canadian soldiers put in harm's way will always have the right to defend themselves and need to. But the question is very much about what Mr. Harper laid out as the parameters of a mission that did not end up being the case, as we found out earlier this week.
Okay, and before I get Sarah and Marissa to respond to that, I want to show a clip of Jason Kenney, who recently responded to those comments. Oh, we might not have that one.
I don't think he knows what he means. Mr. Trudeau, of course, was opposed to the Canadian military contribution to the fight against the jihadi terrorist army in Iraq.
Marissa?
I think he's splitting hairs over emotion. He's being critical of the Harper government because there are troops on the ground rather, that are painting targets, and because troops then defended themselves when ISIS attacked them. He's splitting hairs over emotion and suggesting that they're violating the parameters of the initial decision to go into Iraq.
I just don't think that message track will work with Canadians,
No,
Sarah.
he's on the complete wrong side of this when it comes to everyday people, everyday Canadians.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everyone knows that we can't sit on the sidelines and just hand over, down wool jackets and some blankets and think that we've done our part to ensure the safety and security of the Western world. I will say this, I thought it was particularly interesting that he did say that troops do have the right to defend themselves. Well, that is a very different position than Liberals took in Rwanda, for example, where we had blue helmets on, basically sitting on the sidelines and sitting on their guns where they're getting targeted by groups in the Rwandan conflict. So very different.
Machete wielding.
Yeah, very different position. And I think that the Prime Minister and everyone, I think, recognizes that when you go to a conflict zone and you send armed soldiers there, that there are risks that there are going to be injuries and that they are going to be attacked. We had our Canadian soldiers training the Iraqi troops, which is part of the mandate that the House of Commons voted on and passed. That's what they were doing when they had a group of terrorists come and attack them. Of course, our Canadian Armed Forces should be able to defend themselves.
Yeah, right. We have 30 seconds left. You get the last word. He's going to continue his tour around Southern Ontario, vote-rich Southern Ontario, Marissa. What is the message? What are the talking points he's going to continue to test out?
I think he'll continue to focus on the economy. I think he'll try to take a step back from his comments on the Iraq war because it's proving to be actually quite detrimental, I think, to him.
Okay, great discussion. Thanks, Lee.